Hey guys, how's it going? Srey here and I am back today with another How Good Is video. Today it's going to be featuring Kael'thas Sunstrider, the Sun King. Kael'thas is a ranged assassin hero from the Warcraft universe. He functions as a fire mage who punishes enemies that stay too close together, making him very effective against heavy melee comps. Although Kael'thas' damage output is very high and it's almost all AoE damage, he lacks any sort of mobility. This makes positioning extremely important. If enemies get on top of you, you're going to need the peel of allies unless you can just kill them outright. Most of Kael'thas' damage is upfront burst damage, but some of it can be dealt over time through the spreading of his bombs, which we'll talk about in a moment. Currently there are 4 true mages in the game: Kael'thas, Chromie, Gul'dan, and Jaina. Chromie is a long-ranged poke mage, Gul'dan is a sustained damage mage, Jaina is a backline assassin generally, and Kael'thas is somewhere in the middle. So he has good poke, and he has good burst, and he has good sustain. On the left here, you'll see KT's basic attack damage is quite low. This is true for most mages. KT's basic abilities also outrange his basic attack range, but this doesn't mean that if you're within range, you shouldn't attack. It'll often mean the difference between securing the kill and letting them get away. KT is generally the best pick out of the 4 mages, but this isn't always true. It depends on your comp, the enemy's comp, and the map. So, how good is Kael'thas? Well, it turns out he's pretty good. This is due to the fact that he doesn't really have a bad matchup or map. Sure, some maps are better for him, and some heroes are more difficult for him to deal with, but this can be generally overcome with skill or comp. So he might be a little worse against the Zeratul or high dive comps, but he's excellent against heavy melee comps. And although he might not be the best on Cursed Hollow, he's fantastic on Infernal Shrines. Alright, let's go over Kael'thas' basic abilities. His first basic ability is Flamestrike, and is one of his 2 sources of damage, the other being Living Bomb. Flamestrike reads, after 1 second, deal damage in an area. It costs 70 mana and has a 7-second cooldown. You'll see that below it says Verdant Spheres, and it has an additional description. We'll talk about this later. So Flamestrike, you basically just cast it and deals damage in an area. If I walk up to this target dummy here, you'll see that it does damage to the target dummy. And again, this is AoE damage, so it damages all targets in the area. If I turn on minions here, you can see how much damage it actually does. So it brings the ranger minions just below half health, and it almost kills the wizard minion. The front guys will take about 1/3 of their health. So this, in combination with your auto attacks and Living Bomb, will be enough to clear the wave early game quite quickly, at least faster than pretty much any other hero. This is your main source of damage in the late game as well. So although it's a very substantial source of damage for your early game, late game you're going to be poking with this at max range, and it's going to be your main source of damage. Let's talk about Kael'thas' next basic ability. Living Bomb is a 10-second cooldown that costs 50 mana. It can be cast on any enemy, so this includes structures, mercenaries, and minions. You deal damage to the target over 3 seconds, and after it explodes, it deals additional damage to all nearby enemies. Other heroes damaged by this explosion are also affected by Living Bomb, though the secondary explosions cannot spread. So if I just cast it on this target dummy here, if I actually cast it, you'll see that it does damage for 3 seconds, and then it explodes. With that explosion radius, that will deal damage to all nearby enemies. However, if it hits another enemy hero, it will spread to that hero. So I've turned the Vikings on here, and we'll see that if I cast it on the Viking, after 3 seconds, it'll explode and damage. This explosion will not bounce to Olaf though. So it'll still deal damage to everyone, but it won't bounce again. Living Bomb will generally be your main source of damage during the early game because of ease of cast, and Flamestrike really gains a lot of its power through talents. So you're going to be casting Living Bomb on pretty much the nearest enemy hero just for trading damage, and it's particularly effective if the enemy team groups. Although it's still going to play a large part of your kit during the late game, you mostly won't be able to get in range of enemies, because if you're this close, if you're walking up to a hero to cast Living Bomb late game, you'll probably just die instantly. Unless the enemy team is already engaged in a fight. Kael'thas' third basic ability is Gravity Lapse, so it costs 90 mana and has a 14-second cooldown. You stun the first enemy hit for 1 second. So that simply looks like this. This can go through structures, it can go through terrain. and against the first enemy hit. So if it hits this ogre, it won't hit the next ogre, and it can indeed hit mercenaries and minions. So if I hit the hero here, they'll simply be stunned for 1 second. Kael'thas does have a combo, but it's pretty easy to do. You're just going to cast Gravity Lapse into Flamestrike into Living Bomb. So let's say this target is walking up to me, I'll simply EQW and throw in some auto attacks in between, and that's going to be the biggest single burst combo that I can deal. The Gravity Lapse will keep them in place to guarantee land the Flamestrike. Flamestrike is actually quite difficult to land if there's no CC, and if the enemy team sees you as well. So if you're casting from out of vision, you can usually get off by just throwing your abilities. But if you are in vision, it's going to be pretty easy for the enemy team to dodge. Now, unlike most other heroes in the game, Kael'thas actually has a 4th basic ability, Verdant Spheres. It's his D. So it has a 6-second cooldown, doesn't cost any mana, and you can activate it to make Kael'thas' next basic ability more powerful. You can see under here that there's additional descriptions for these abilities, and that's what this is. So if you activate Verdant Spheres, you can see these orbs will go around, and once an ability is used, this will go on a 6-second cooldown. So for Flamestrike, it increases the radius of Flamestrike by 50%. So this is useful for several talents, for wave clearing, and just for damaging enemies in general, especially late game once a lot of your talents are put into Flamestrike. So early game, you pretty much only want to use DQ when you are clearing waves, or if you can kind of guaranteed hit several heroes. It's especially important at level 7 when you get burned flesh, because you can deal % damage if you hit 2 or more heroes, so it makes it a lot easier to hit 2 or more heroes. His next Verdant Spheres enhancement is for Living Bomb, and it makes Living Bomb cost no mana and have no cooldown. So I'm going to toggle cooldowns off here. I activate Verdant Spheres and I cast it on this dummy, and you can see that it's still fully on cooldown here, and it doesn't cost any mana whatsoever. So this is especially good when you're close to enemies and during the early game when you just want to trade. So you can cast it on, I can cast it on both these ogres, for example, and when it explodes, it will actually bounce to enemy heroes. This is also very good for wave clearing during the early game. Notice if you DQ, it doesn't actually increase the damage of Flamestrike, so the most optimal combo would be to simply Q and then DW a target, and that'll be the most efficient way of clearing. Gravity Lapse. Verdant Spheres of Gravity Lapse causes Gravity Lapse to stun the first 3 enemies hit and increase the stun duration by 50%. So it increases the stun from 1 to 1.5, and it simply goes through 3 enemies. So if I toggle minions here, you can see that the first 3 minions will be stunned instead of simply the first. They also stun for a little bit longer. So if you're on a single, if you're doing damage to a single target, it's actually worthwhile to have your combo be DE QW. So you'll DE and then QW, and that'll be your highest possible damage output. Alright, let's move on to Kael'thas' talents. So level 1, we have Convection, Felon Fusion, and Mana Addict. Convection is a quest talent. Damaging an enemy hero with Flamestrike increases its damage by 5 up to 100. This bonus is lost on death. After hitting 20 enemy heroes, you increase Flamestrike's damage by an additional 100 and no longer lose any bonuses on death. So once you complete this quest, it's going to be 200 extra damage on Q, which is quite substantial, and obviously once you complete it, you can no longer lose the stacks, which is great. So how much is 200? Well, at level 20, your Q is going to deal about 702 damage, which is quite a lot of damage. So getting this talent will increase it by about 28.5%. Usually you'll complete this quest much earlier. If you're not dying, it'll usually be pre-10. So it's going to be a much larger increase in proportion to how much damage that Flamestrike deals. Obviously the downside to this talent is that if you die, this talent basically does nothing. So I generally wouldn't recommend this talent. The next option is Felon Fusion, and it increases Kael'thas' spell power by 4%. In addition, Kael'thas heals for a certain amount when activating Verdant Spheres. So obviously the amount you heal is relative to what level you are, but the spell power is a flat 4%. So 4% isn't actually a lot, and it's definitely not the reason you're going to get this talent. You're not going to get this talent for a 4% damage increase. If you want a damage increase, you go for Convection. If you want sustain through the healing that this provides, you take this talent. So if you don't have a healer in your team, maybe you're playing quick match, this could be a pretty good option. But generally, you want to stay away from this talent. Mana Addict is the best talent at this tier and is what I'd recommend pretty much every single game. Unless you're able to play very safe and you're guaranteed not to lose stacks from convection and you don't need the shielding this talent provides. So the quest reads, gathering a regeneration globe increases Kael'thas' maximum mana by 15. After gathering 20 globes, Kael'thas can activate Arcane Barrier to gain a shield equal to 100% of his maximum mana for 4 seconds, 45-second cooldown. So this helps you in two ways. Not only does it pretty much remove the mana problems that you'll have playing Kael'thas, but it also gives you a very substantial shield and actually gives you a tool to deal with enemy heroes that are going to dive you. So this is a very important talent to have. So let me just take the talent. I'm going to complete quest here. And you can see that once I have completed the quest at 20 globes, it'll give you a option to activate Arcane Barrier. And obviously the quest option here is going to completely overstack this talent. Because you can't actually stack it past the 20 globe bonus, so you can get much more than 20 globes, so the quest will keep stacking. And it's a very strong talent against dives, so you can just activate it once you think you're going to take damage, and it will reduce that damage. At level 4, Kael'thas has Netherwind, Energy Royal, and Mana Tap. Netherwind increases Gravity Lapse range by 30%, and when Gravity Lapse hits an enemy hero, it refunds 80 mana. So the normal range of Gravity Lapse is this, and when I get Netherwind, it's 30% further. So that's quite nice for being able to catch enemies. Usually they don't expect the range to be that far. So it changes Gravity Lapse from being a purely using something to peel for yourself if enemies are near you, or follow up for your ally CC, and you can use it as an aggressive tool to catch enemies as well. It also refunds mana, which is actually very helpful. So even though you have a Mana Addict and it'll solve most of your problems, Netherwind further compounds that and pretty much prevents you from having any mana problems as Kael'thas, which is pretty huge. You can spam your abilities as much as you want. And the refund of 80 mana is 10 less than the cost of the ability. The cost of the ability is 90 and it refunds 80. So you're almost getting this ability for free if you do hit it. Energy Royal reduces Gravity Lapse's cooldown by 9 seconds when it hits a hero. So it's a flat 9 seconds that doesn't compound if you hit multiple heroes. So it reduces the cooldown from 14 to 5 seconds if you do hit a hero. Now the reason I like Netherwind more than Energy Royal is you usually don't need to spam it that often, and if you do spam it that often, you'll probably be running out of mana. So not only does this prevent you from using mana, or it gives you a refund rather, Energy Royal will actually cause you to use more mana because you're using it more often. I think the 30% range is just better than having a lower cooldown. Mana Tap is the last talent at level 4, and when activate Verdant Spheres, it restores 4% of Kael'thas' maximum mana. This is more of a sustained talent. I find that Netherwind will, if you're stunning heroes, you'll actually have more mana with Netherwind's refund than you will when you go Mana Tap. Mana Tap does work with Mana Addict, but it's actually just overkill. You don't need this talent. So this is purely economical, and it's not a talent that will actually help you in fights. So I prefer Netherwind at level 4. At level 7, we have Burned Flesh, Sun King's Fury, and Sunfire Enchantment. When Flamestrike damages 2 or more heroes, they take an additional damage equal to 8% of their maximum health. So this is obviously very good versus heavy frontline heroes, and it also stacks well with the talents you'll get at levels 16 and 20. So this is generally more of a late game build when you're going this talent, and indeed it offers that kind of strength, because usually for the early game you're using Living Bomb to trade and you're not actually using your Flamestrike. So you don't want to have to DQ targets during the early game. You want to be saving D for your W so you can Living Bomb. But this does start to work towards a late game build. So I'd still recommend this talent, even though it's not that effective early game unless the enemy team has a lot of melee heroes. Sun King's Fury. Living Bombs that spread to enemy heroes deal 35% more damage. So this is basically more AoE damage, and I feel like if you want to do more AoE damage, you're better off just going Burned Flesh. Sunfire Enchantment. Activating Verdant Spheres causes Kael'thas' next basic attack to instead deal extra spell damage. Sunfire Enchantment. Activating Verdant Spheres causes Kael'thas' next basic attack to instead deal 362 spell damage. So you can see here that Kael'thas deals 143 damage. This is instead replaced with Sunfire Enchantment. So it does a little more than double your attack damage, which is nice, and it's also converted to spell damage. So you want to go Sunfire Enchantment if the enemy team really just isn't stacking. You notice that both of these talents are AoE talents. So if the enemy team just really isn't stacking the entire game, say they have some kind of Abathur comp where they're splitting a lot as well, Sunfire damage will just give you more damage for single targets. Remember that this transforms your auto attack to an ability, so it won't be prevented by evasion like abilities. So Illidan's evasion won't prevent Sunfire Enchantment, and neither will Chen's or any other kind of evasion in the game, including dodge on Genji. At level 10, we have Kael'thas' 2 heroics, Phoenix and Pyroblast. Phoenix costs 80 mana and has a 60-second cooldown. You launch a Phoenix in an area, dealing damage along the way. The Phoenix then persists for 7 seconds and attacks enemies, dealing damage and splashing for 50%. So Phoenix is the better option here in the majority of your games, and it simply looks like this. So you can see that since there's no targets here, it won't attack any enemies. If I cast it here, it will attack this target dummy here, and it also does prioritize heroes. So if I toggle the minions on here, you can see that it deals a lot of damage. It attacks the closest target. You can see that they take AoE damage. If there was a hero there, it would prioritize that hero, and if there are several heroes, it will attack the closest one. Pyroblast is KT's second heroic ability. It costs 80 mana and has a 100-second cooldown. After 1.5 seconds, you cast a slow moving fireball that deals damage to an enemy hero and additional damage to enemies nearby.
Choose a talent.
So if I cast it on, you can see that the range first of all is absolutely massive, and if I cast it on this target dummy, you can see that it will just slowly move to that target and speeds up as it goes. Also notice that there's a secondary casting indicator over here, and if I cancel the ability early by walking away, it'll go on a 10-second cooldown. So you can see this extra indicator here, and what this basically means is that if an enemy hero is walking away while I'm casting it, the ability won't be casted while I'm channeling unless they walk out of that dotted line. So if they do walk out of that dotted line, Pyroblast will be interrupted, but it will not go on cooldown. Also notice that when I cast the ability, there is an indicator around it, and this is the AoE splash damage. So if enemies are within there, they will take additional damage. Now, the reason Pyroblast just isn't that good most of the time is because it can be dodged by a ton of different effects or reduced. So if an enemy is divine shielded by an Uther, or if you're casting on a Tassadar and he goes, he casts his E to basically go invisible, he won't take any damage. You can blink it if you're a Zeratul and you blink at the right time. If you have spell shield, it gets significantly reduced. So basically there's tons of different reductions in damage that will significantly reduce the damage to ineffectiveness, or there's ability that can just straight up prevent Pyroblast from even doing anything in the first place. So for that reason, Phoenix is generally the better option. Now if the enemy team has no way of dealing with Pyroblast, so they don't have any kind of ice blocks or any kind of Aureal abilities, then Pyroblast might be good. If the enemy team is diving really hard, say there's an Illidan and he didn't go Metamorphosis, then you can cast on him and he's basically zoned from the fight. There's some situations like that where it'll be good, but most of the time the enemy team will have a way of dealing with it and you won't get value. But if they don't, then I can see a situation for it. Phoenix, on the other hand, is always good, so I would always go Phoenix if I'm playing Kael'thas, except in those very few circumstances where Pyroblast is good. At level 13, we have Pyromaniac, Backdraft, and Fission Bomb. Pyromaniac reads, each time Living Bomb deals periodic damage, Kael'thas' basic abilities are reduced by 1 second. So Kael'thas' Living Bomb will proc 3 times. That means it reduces the cooldown of your basic abilities by 3 seconds. This does not proc on Verdant Spheres. You can see if I cast it on the target dummy here, it's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th is the actual explosion, so it's not periodic damage. So it's going to reduce the cooldown, your cooldowns by 3 seconds. You can also use Verdant Spheres to cast 2 Living Bombs. So if I take this talent here and I toggle cooldowns off, you can see that it will reduce the cooldowns you can at the same time. So it'll give 6 seconds of CDR when you cast both. And if it spreads to additional targets, you'll gain additional CDR. So this is my favorite option at level 13 and what I go every game. The other option is Backdraft. Living Bomb's explosion slows enemy movement speed by 30% for 2 seconds. So this means that if the explosion hits any enemies within it, then it will slow. So it's not just the target that's being affected. So any enemy that's affected by this explosion here around the target will also be slowed. And then Fission Bomb increases Living Bomb's explosion radius by 20%. I feel like these two are not nearly as competitive as Pyromaniac, and Pyromaniac is a must take at level 13. Level 16 is when Kael'thas really amps up, and this is due to Fury of the Sunwell. So Flamestrike will explode a second time 1.5 seconds later. So that just looks like this. So it essentially doubles the damage of your Flamestrike. Although enemies are obviously not guaranteed to stand in the same spot, it does make it a lot harder for enemies to move around if you're throwing flame strikes out at max range, and if targets do get hit by it, then they will take significantly increased damage. This is affected by convection at level 1 and burn flesh at level 7, so you can see how his early talents really help him be a strong late game monster. The other options are Twin Spheres. Verdant Spheres gains a second charge, and Arcane Dynamo. Using a basic ability increases Kael'thas' spell power by 3% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 15%. So I really feel that Fear of the Sunwell just completely outclasses these other two talents. This doesn't actually increase your damage at all unless you went Sunfire enchantment at level 7, or if you're hitting multiple targets with Living Bomb. But Fear of the Sunwell, I think, just outdamages this completely. This is basically a utility talent here. And then Arcane Dynamo, I really don't feel like 15% spell damage at its best can even compare to Fear of the Sunwell. This also helps with sieging, so if you're against enemy structures, siege damage that you deal with your Q will hit twice, so you have twice as much, and this actually helps poke enemy structures down very, very effectively. It's also really good on any kind of wave clear map, so Brax's holdout against the Zerg, or if you're on Infernal Shrines and trying to get the Shrines, this is a very strong talent for securing that. Kael'thas' level 16 power spike is further increased at level 20 when you have access to Flamethrower. So Flamethrower increases the cast range of Flamestrike by 40%, and if Flamestrike hits 2 or more heroes, its cooldown is reduced by 4 seconds. So you can see if I take this talent, before I take it, this is the normal cast range, and if I take Flamethrower, the cast range is significantly further, 40% further. And it also works with, well, it doesn't really work with Burn Flesh, but if you hit 2 or more heroes with this talent, you're going to get, with both these talents combined, you'll get a significant increase in effectiveness for your Flamestrike. And because you can have Flamestrike hit twice, it further increases the odds of hitting 2 heroes. So note that if I hit 1 hero in the first Flamestrike and 1 hero on the second Flamestrike, due to Fury of the Sunwell, that doesn't count as 2 heroes. You actually have to hit 2 within 1 cast, or within 1 explosion. So this is just a really, really strong late game. Once you have this talent, you can poke from completely safe distance. And you can just throw out your Qs and you can walk back. And you generally just want to stay at max range, throw your Phoenix out, throw Gravity Lapse out, and throw Living Bomb out. And this is why I said that Living Bomb is really most effective during the early game, because you can outrange the enemies so far with Flamestrike that you won't even be within range to cast Living Bomb in the first place. At least not most of the time. Sometimes you can walk up to the enemy team, but you can also just cast Flamestrike if you just want to guarantee your safety. The other options at level 20 are Rebirth, increases Phoenix duration by 100%. While alive, the Phoenix may be ordered to move to a different location. Presence of Mind, increases Power Blast explosion radius by 50% and reduces its cooldown by 25 seconds per enemy hero hit. And Master of Flames, Living Bombs spread from explosions can now also spread Living Bombs. So Living Bombs here can spread instantly. So you can see on this talent, it reads secondary explosion cannot spread Living Bomb, but with this talent, the secondary explosion can spread Living Bomb. So overall, these talents are pretty garbage. Rebirth is somewhat decent. Presence of Mind really isn't that good at all. Although it increases the explosion radius and you can get CDR on multiple heroes hit, you basically never hit multiple heroes with Pyroblast, so this talent is just wasted if you did go Pyro. Master of Flames, again, you're playing at max range, so it's better just to go with Flamethrower. And Rebirth, Flamethrower again just kind of outclasses that ability. So how do you play Kael'thas? Well, during the early game, you're basically walking up to heroes and trading with Living Bomb and Flamestrike and Gravity Lapse. So early game Gravity Lapse combos are really important. So you basically DEQW a target, and you can also Phoenix on top of that for additional damage once you hit level 10. Once you start moving into level 16 is when you really want to use DQ for pretty much everything. So early game you only want to use DQ if you're guaranteed to hit it for the purpose of burned flesh, or if you're wave clearing. And then once you hit late game, you pretty much exclusively want to use DQ for everything. So it'll be your wave clear, it'll be your damage. You don't want to DW late game. Late game, you're just going to throw, you can throw Gravity Lapse if you're going to hit a sick combo and multiple people, of course, but most of the time you're going to be DQing. I don't think you'd really ever DW late game. You just get more effectiveness if you DQ. And you just want to throw out Phoenix when you have a good situation and enemies are all clumped up in a choke as well. So I hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you guys next time.